to the Alden About Everything series, episode 3. Today, we will be interviewing a son of the soil from Brompton St Elizabeth, from Munro College, a UE Pelican, and today an attorney-at-law. His name, Demetrie Adams. Let's go!
Mr. Demetrie Adams, I mean, you are a prolific attorney who have over the years beaten some very tough cases. But you didn't just arrive here just so. You never just come up so. It took a process that started in Brompton St Elizabeth, Munro College, the University of the West Indies, to bring you here. So let us start at the impetus, Brompton. Tell us about how you grew up and some of the, just tell us about your time growing up in Brompton.
Aldon, thanks again. I really appreciate the opportunity to share my story with you. Brompton St Elizabeth started from Brompton Primary, before that St Teresa Basic School. A district in St Elizabeth where, at the grassroots level, the community level, you're raised by the whole neighborhood. And I was fortunate to have around me people who cared. So I grew up with my grandmother as the person who I was closest with, and that would have been my paternal grandmother. And some would say I was spoiled by her, but growing up, I can say I truly appreciated all the lessons she taught me.
What were some of the lessons?
Patience, working hard, being respectful to people, no matter their background. And unfortunately, or regrettably, she passed away in 2013, but those memories, those lessons still live on for me. And I've embodied them in my daily practice and the way I interact with people living in the corporate area. We weren't rich, but we weren't poor. Whether in spirit or resources, we weren't poor. I can vividly remember waking up to breakfast and going to bed after having dinner. But we lived a good life. And my father, aunts, grandfather who recently passed, we're all of a Christian background, so there's definitely the belief in God. So I grew up knowing right from wrong, and I appreciated that. And I think that in St. Elizabeth, my family, or Brompton in particular, my family is respected because of how they treat people. So I had that humble beginning, and then went to Munro
College.
The greatest institution in Jamaica.
I give you the time to say your motto so you can so they don't
Which one, the formal or the informal one?
Whichever one that make you feel good.
The motto is in our case, itam quis occultabit, but you know how we identify ourselves as Monroeans is Boboski Wanta Alaski. Listen, 7 years of re-socialization in the sense that I've learned to live with everybody in society because of Munro College.
You said something earlier in our talk off camera. You said Munro gave you insight to the point where it taught you that Jamaica is beyond Brompton. Explain to me what you meant by that.
All right. And I was heading there. Living in a dormitory, you're exposed to the good, the bad, and the indifferent. You're exposed to persons who came from every parish in the island, as well as overseas, because I remember one time there were guys from Turks and Caicos who were attending Munro through the athletics program. So you were able to live with the rich, the poor, some would say the hype, the humble. So in those interactions, you understand from day one you interact with an individual based on their strengths, right? You try not to condemn or to judge. And fortunately for me, that is where I started the habit of building out a network and having around me persons who I think can make me a better man, as well as to help me move up the social ladder. So that in and of itself was a mind-blowing experience, right? To know that, hey, there are people who live outside of St. Elizabeth who are good people, or outside of Jamaica, and you get that cultural exchange, whether cultural in terms of the parish to parish or country to country.
Was it during your time at Munro you got inspired to become an attorney?
Not my time at Munro. I did sixth form at Hampton School. So I
Hold
spent the lower sixth and upper
What?
sixth form at Hampton School. So we had an exchange program where the boys who did the arts would go to Hampton for classes during the day, and the girls who did the sciences would go to Munro. I gather that program is no longer in existence. But I was fortunate enough to be around 1,500 women, and I guess because of my love for women, I wanted to be around women. Law was one of the courses which I took, and I realized that.
Let me take a sidestep for a bit. A situation happened while you were doing classes at Hampton. You want to tell us about it?
A situation for which I'm not proud. I've learned that respect for women is something that every young man should learn. There was an altercation with a young lady. To date, she is my very good friend. She's also a client of mine. So I've learned that it is always best not to try and be the top gallus or have one bag of woman. It's really, I think I've passed that stage in my life because that was what led to the altercation. Learned from it. And I think I'm a better man as a result.
I mean, the talk that we got is that it was handled well. And, same thing as you say, you and the young lady is quite
Yes.
good today.
Yes.
So it just proves that, throughout your high school life, you'd have learned some very valuable lessons that help you to be who you are today.
I did. And I think that was the second time in my life at that point, in 2010, when I actually apologized to someone. Because I don't think that one should apologize if they don't mean it. And I've never been in a position where I've acted intentionally towards someone which warrants an apology. So I remember that vividly. But good times, lessons learned, and we moved on.
All right. So, I mean, there's so many stories about Munro College and, Pada Court and what's that thing when they make with the bully beef porridge soup? I don't know, but I mean, it seems to be a great part of the culture there. But you were telling me about, where you got your inspiration to become an attorney.
Yes. So the truth is, when we went to Hampton, I was doing law, economics, and history. Economics and history was just, they were not connecting in terms of the retention of the material. But you had to do at least one course to remain at Hampton. So it became law. And I initially went to Hampton not knowing after CSEC what I wanted to do. I just know that I get an opportunity to go to sixth form and I want to be around the ladies. So I've always said that most of these major decisions in my life have been driven by the fact that a woman has been involved, right? So law was the only course remaining in the catalog, and I did it. And actually for unit 1 and 2, I got top performances in the island. So that was when I realized, hold on, this thing might be good for me. And I guess from about 4th, 5th form, many persons would have seen me as an individual who would either become a politician or an attorney. And believe it or not, it was cemented in my mind that this is the path I should take when I was awarded the Jamaica Emancipation Scholarship for the full 5 years of my legal training. So that was when I realized this is the path either ordained by God for me or the path that I had the passion for.
Interesting. So tell me about your time at the University of the West Indies. I mean, you didn't have to worry about the tuition part of it. I mean, that would have taken a lot of, burden.
Yes.
One could imagine that having to sustain your scholarship, you'd have to maintain, particular grades.
Yes.
Going to UWI, where the ratio to male to female is quite a disparity. Yeah. How did you handle some of the challenges while you were there?
Well, 3 years at university. One was spent at Mona, and the other 2 at Caville. Barbados, Caville campus. Mona was adjusting to Kingston life, the city life. You move from Brompton, the rural Brompton in St Elizabeth, to Kingston. Different culture as in relation to how people relate to each other. And that was in 2010 off the heels of the Tivoli incursion. So when you heard about the Tivoli incursion in May of 2010, I came to Kingston in August of 2010. All I could think about was how would my safety be affected, because I'm from a parish where you walk freely at night without hardly anything happening. So I had to settle into the urban living, and within a year, and in terms of university, did some activities, kind of met some new friends who are still friends today. And then we moved into the second year in Barbados, which I know a change of culture in terms of country.
You affiliated to a hall, or you were?
I was affiliated to Chancellor Hall. And the truth is, I don't regret not boarding at UWI, but after 7 years being in a boarding situation, I thought it best to see how the traveling would have worked out.
What was one of the biggest culture shocks? Because Jamaica is such a diverse place with so many intra-cultures. What was one of the biggest shock you had as a youngster just living in Kingston going to school?
Saying good morning. And I always joke about it, and I see people joke about it on Twitter as well. You say good morning to someone in Kingston, they look in your eyes and walk past you. And maybe it's not them being rude, or you're trying to understand what is happening, but I know from a culture where if you pass 10 people on the road, you say good morning. But when I came to Kingston and I passed 10 people and I said good morning, probably 3 would reply to you. So that was a shock, funny enough, a shock for me.
All right. So, UWI, having learned what you needed to learn, you maintained your grades properly.
Yes.
Graduated. I believe most attorney, want to have a senior attorney, guide them into their practice.
Before I even move into the practice, my 2 years in Barbados were lovely, amazing. Because I had the opportunity of meeting a former Prime Minister, spending time around him. That would be the Right Honorable Owen Arthur, blessed memory, passed last year. My senior in Barbados, who took me under his wings in terms of allowing me to work in his office, do some research, is now a very good friend. And because of him, I now practice in Barbados. So one of the cases that I did in the CCJ was a case which we worked on together, and it was a watershed case in the sense that it's groundbreaking for employment law in Barbados. So I still have that connection with Barbados because of how I appreciated the culture and how I interacted. I have friends there. I go back regularly. Now, so that transition from Barbados back to Jamaica, did my 2 years at Norman Manley Law School, I found several persons who inspired me at that time. One such person was Walter Scott, Queen's Counsel. Walter is still a consultant to my firm now, but Walter gave me my first job as an attorney. I've never, and I have the distinction of saying I've never been interviewed for a job before. You know, I've always been invited to come and work. Walter gave me my first job at Ratchet Patterson in 2015. And let me tell you, that was an amazing experience because I had a Queen's Counsel to guide me, and I'll be forever indebted and grateful to Walter for that.
So good mentorship.
Yes, it is extremely important, and for some reason, I think every profession should have a mentorship program in place. I know the Jamaica Bar Association has that in place, but for every profession, you need seniors who are willing to pass down the information to the younger set of people who are entering the profession, because that is extremely important. You know, that's how the culture continues, or the traditions continue. And I have been a beneficiary of good mentorship. And because of that, I have a firm and a partnership now with Christian Tavares-Finson. And we've been 3 years in, and in my estimation, we're doing well.
What would you say to those individuals who believe that the law practice is saturated?
I've always held the view that the legal profession in Jamaica is not saturated. What the issue is that every student coming out of law school wants to go into the traditional areas. So everybody wants to do a little criminal law, which is good for advocacy, or they want to go do conveyancing, real estate. But what I would say is that there are niche areas in which you can distinguish yourself as an attorney. Oil and gas law, energy law, sports and entertainment, intellectual property. These are areas in which in Jamaica we don't have that much persons practicing, which I think that the focus from the educational level into practice should be on moving more people or directing their attention towards those areas. So it's not saturated in the sense that we have too many lawyers. But on the website of the General Legal Council, I think we have in any given year about 2,300 to 2,500 lawyers practicing in a population of 3 million people. So it's not that you have too much lawyers. It's just that lawyers in one area. Mm-hmm. And that is my view on that.
All right. How do you balance work life, the personal life? Like how do you create that balance? Because being an attorney, it takes a lot in terms of your time, to put together your cases, what is all that necessities.
Well, I wouldn't say we're limited to attorneys, but I think we carry everybody's sins and burdens with us. It's difficult. It is difficult. And yes, you want to go to Arabi's every night, which is my favorite place. But you want to go out with your friends. You can't do it every night, so you have to make sacrifices. Or and that is something I mentioned earlier, the whole issue of patience, which I learned from my grandma. What I try to do is set up a routine, and once I'm setting a routine, I'm good. So I know that I need to spend 15 hours a day, either conceptualizing in my head what arguments I have to do, put to the court, or what submissions I have to write. And those 15 hours include office time. So it might be 8 hours in the day, but I know I'm here at the office from about 7:30. And sometimes I leave 7:30. And so I know I have a 12-hour work day. I've never been one who has been shy in terms of work, but on weekends, I try to unwind by ensuring that I go listen to some live music. I try to maintain a presence in the gym, at least 3 to 4 times per week to ensure that as much as I'm in this pursuit to be the best attorney I can be, or to get some money in my pocket, I can do that to the detriment of my health. So at the end of the day, it is a hard balance, but I have found what works for me is that when I set my routine, it works smoothly.
What has been your biggest challenge in terms of, trying to explain to a client the situation that, exists for them?
The beauty about law is that every situation must be treated on its own merits. I think for my clients, I don't think they have ever had a difficulty in terms of me breaking things down, because I got 7 years of tutoring at the Faculty of Law. So I had to break down legal principles to students who were never exposed to the area. So I think that has enabled me to try and put myself in their shoes to say, all right. And Patwa works too. You have to approach a layman in his language. So I've never really had a difficulty, if I should be honest, in conveying or advising a client as to the best course of action. Yes, you will have clients who do not follow your advice, and that is where you will just have to part company with them. But other than that, it has been pretty easy, if I should be honest, in relation to the communication between myself and a client.
There has been a recent ruling on, attorneys, advertising their services.
Yes.
How do you feel about that, and how do you see it affecting your practice?
I've always been a conservative person in relation to the legal profession. I admire the English traditions. Some might call me a colonialist, which that isn't the case, but I believe that the English have mastered preserving their culture and traditions because they believe in pomp and pageantry and doing things a certain way. Similarly to advertising, it has been a long-held view that your work should speak for yourself. But we live in an ever-changing world. I have never felt threatened by the fact that I do not take my content to social media in terms of Tavares-Finson Adams, best attorneys in this area, that area. Our work has always spoken for itself, right? We have never had that difficulty. However, I think that it will now be an issue where the larger firms or individuals or attorneys who can afford to spend on marketing and advertisement to the limited extent we can now advertise may drown out those who are now coming into the profession. And that is something that the General Legal Counsel would have to look deeper into in relation to how do we ensure that there isn't an unfair advantage when it comes on to advertisements. But the competition will get stiffer, but at the end of the day, your work speaks for yourself.
What do you say to that young individual who is at their home right now with big dreams and big hopes and big aspiration, but cannot see the light at the end of the tunnel? What do you say to that person, who hears your story and want to achieve everything they have set for themselves?
Never, 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 never give up. If you have a dream, if you have a plan, reduce it to writing, put it on paper, and do everything in your power to execute. We are human beings. Relationships and bonds work, form them, and ensure that you have the right set of people around you, but never, never, never give up.
Well, there you have it. From Mr. Demetrie Adams, Attorney-at-Law. Thanks, Demetrie, for having us.
Pleasure
Thanks
is
for
all
being
mine.
here at Aldon About Everything. And trust me, I really enjoyed this conversation, from your time spent in learning from your grandmother to your time at Munro and of course the Hampton School.
Don't leave out Hampton School.
And how you progressed to being the attorney that you are today. I know that a lot of young persons will see this and be very inspired. So from us to you,
Thank you.
go.
Respect.
Yeah, man.